What's up, everybody? It's Pikel. DRX lost, and my life is in shambles. In this episode, we will go over the games from yesterday, the games for tomorrow, and I will cry.
No, you don't need I'm doing legend. He a 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 legend. Welcome to the league. 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 Welcome to the league. To the league. To the league. To the league. To the league.
You know, it takes a big man to admit when he's wrong, but it takes an even bigger man to say, fuck you, I'm right, and this game means nothing. DRX will rise from the ashes of this defeat and will be completely okay. There is no reason to panic. Don't worry, we're completely fine. In the first game of DRX's 2022 season, they threw away a quite sizable lead, a 7,000 gold lead. It may have inflated to 8,000 gold at one point. I woke up today, checked my lineups, and I was sad. In the $15 contest, I think almost all of my lineups had DRX in it. I think all of my lineups had DRX in it, and that's okay because the first 2 days I won a little bit. I won a little bit of money. Then today I basically gave it all back. The winning lineup was a jungle captain with LNG and LSB. So this person obviously is a hater because they didn't have DRX in their lineup. But they had Tarzan, Dove, Kroko, Closer, Light Lumao, and Live Sandbox's team slot. Interesting lineup. Slightly different from the other lineups that were at the top of the board. And that's how you take down a tournament. So good job, Paulus Carolus. I think that he does pretty good in general on DraftKings. I recognize that name. I think he does a lot of mass multi-entry. But getting back into this game, the Tryndamere versus Graves matchup is somewhat unique in the sense that Graves is stronger than Tryndamere for the early game. If you're on the solo queue ladder, there's always a chance that the Tryndamere just beats you level 1 because a lot of people don't understand the matchup, I think. But at the higher levels of play, I think that Graves is supposed to win the early game. But eventually, Tryndamere is going to do enough damage to threaten Graves. And there were a couple of times in the first game that I saw the highlights of where Tryndamere can eventually just run down Graves and does a decent amount of damage. You're welcome for slurping into your ear right there. We had Piosic on Viego. Viego's a fine champion. A couple people in the Discord were mentioning that they watched the hype video for this, and that Deft and Zika were both mentioning how Piosic was the player that they were the most excited to play with on DRX, and that's one of the reasons they went to DRX. So that is, in my opinion, a good sign. It could just be but team speak, coach speak, but it's not a negative, so that's just one thing to kind of think about, I guess. But DRX had a large lead. They tried to make a play on a Baron. They basically stopped putting damage onto the Baron instead of just finishing it, lost the fight, lost Baron, and the game started turning. And then there was also a fight around an Elder Dragon, I think, where instead of forcing harder into the dragon pit, they kind of stood around the pixel brush and they allowed themselves to get engaged on because they didn't understand where the rest of Live Sandbox was. Actually, that was in game 2, I think. Yeah, that was in game 2. But my main takeaway from this kind of game is that DRX will potentially have some struggles around objectives in the early part of the year. I don't think that we need to be alarmed. I really don't. The fact that they're able to create advantages in the early game is really what you want to see, because as time goes on, they'll be more comfortable with one another, and you will just have to assume that they can figure out the coordination around the objectives, because they were also giving up a lot of dragons. They just didn't place a high value on dragons in this game, and that's one thing that I hate to watch It's very tilting to watch. But, disclaimer, all these players are better than me, blah, blah, blah. They're professional players. But that's not a play thing. That's a understanding of the game thing. And again, you could try to make the argument that they wouldn't be at this level without understanding it. But if you look at any professional sport, you see that there is a giant difference between being able to play a game and being able to understand a game and the theory behind the different decisions you should be making. For Live Sandbox, Dove had an okay series. He was outplayed, I think, for the most part in the laning phase, but was able to utilize the Tryndamere matchup to carve out a slight edge in that lane over the length of the series. I was surprised that DRX allowed them to go back into that matchup in the second game, because in the first game you saw it start turning, and that's never a good sign. They probably thought to themselves, we were able to build up a 6,000 or 7,000 gold lead. There's no reason we should be afraid of the Tryndamere. But after a game like that, I think just switching things up is probably smarter. Closer looked pretty good. Envy and Kale are apparently transfers from Genji's academy, so that's fine. I like the fact that DRX played Aphelios in both games. I think that they were somewhat dominant in the first game in the laning phase. They made a couple of plays, and they had a gigantic gold lead. So there's really not too much to take away from that. In my opinion, that's just how I look at League of Legends. If it becomes a consistent problem, then we worry. But for now, you can just chalk it up as a one-time occurrence and move on with your life. Then in the second match, T1 2-0'd Kwangdong Freaks. They were mentioning how Zeus, they were calling him Zeus. It's like, that's Zeus. If you want to call him Zeus, or if he thinks that his name is Zeus, then he can say whatever he wants. That is Zeus. So we're going to be calling him Zeus on this channel. They were saying that he is not going to be the carry style player that Kana was, which is somewhat concerning for me, but the caveat that they gave was that Gumayusi may need a more consistent top laner. My counterpoint to that would be, what's more consistent than Kana just dumpstering people in the top lane? If it's a champion pool thing, that they think that certain kinds of champions will work better with Gumayusi as a carry, I mean, I think it's just a lot of garbage. So hopefully this doesn't end up being a horrible move that makes T1 suffer long term. Owner had a good series. Owner stole the pentakill away from Faker. I think that Keen, Elim, Fate, Teddy Hoyt, they have some okay talent. I think that this will be a good opportunity to pick them in one of the future matches. League PD doesn't have the second game up yet, but let's keep moving. So let's head over to the LPL. And what if I told you that DRX lost and it wasn't the biggest upset of the day? That rare distinction belongs to Top Esports. Top Esports was 2-0'd by Rare Atom. Cube, Leon, Strive, iBoy, Zora. I don't know anything about Strive. I didn't watch this series. People were saying that it was a problem with Tian. But looking at this right here, it's most likely that Top Esports had a big advantage, went into like one Baron fight, lost the Baron. Rare Atom was able to get back into the game. Then they go to the second Baron. Rare Atom wins that one too and ends the game. That's just how these kinds of games happen. So again, I didn't watch this game, but that's kind of what I assume happened based on the scoreline and the numbers that I can see here. 22 kills and a loss is just pretty hysterical. They don't have the second matchup, but this is a kind of thing that I don't really pay much attention to. Every year you get some stinker performances from top teams in the beginning of the year. I'm not worried about it. Or maybe I'm extremely worried about it and just good at hiding it. And then in the second match, LNG beat up on Ultra Prime, which is fine. So let's take a look real fast at tomorrow's matches before we get out of here. I've got to go to the office. So first up, we have Invictus Gaming against Thunder Talk Gaming. Invictus Gaming is the much bigger name I don't necessarily think that they are a strong team this season, though. So let's take a look at their roster real quick. I think they have Nenny, Shun, and some other players that we will be familiar with. So Nenny, Shun, Yukai, I think we've seen a decent amount. I think XZZ was the player that showed up for the Demacia Cup. Xiao Yuji, An, Lucas, Key. I don't really know much about those players. Thunder Talk Gaming, we saw them lose already this season, right? Yeah, we saw them lose to OMG. New Frigid, Captain Puff, Southwind. So this could be a spot where people just see the Invictus Gaming name and say to themselves, you know, I think that Invictus Gaming wins. With Thunder Talk, this is a spot where I'm starting to think to myself, like, everybody saw Thunder Talk lose to OMG, but they weren't completely dominated by OMG, right? So maybe it's a good time to take a look at someone or a team like Thunder Talk Gaming. So during the day, I'll take a look at this closer before I post about it in Discord. And then in the second match, we have Weibo against World Elite. So that's why I was thinking about the Shy, and that's why the title of the video is Theshyning, is because I was thinking, if the team was called Sunning and then they added the Shy, do they become the Shining? And I think the answer is yes. So I will try to remember that as time goes on. I will be calling them the Shining as long as things are going well. If they start losing a lot of matches and we don't want to talk about it, we'll probably just call them Weibo Gaming and pretend like I never liked Weibo Gaming at all. But I would never do something like that. I believe in the boys. So first up, we have Biu against the Shy. I prefer the Shy. We have S of M against Beishang. I do prefer Beishang. We have Angel against Xie or Shanks. I think that Xie is the better player than Shanks. I think that the DFS community doesn't like Xie and might think that Shanks is better. I do think that Xie is better, though. He has long-term talent, and he's had some really great performances throughout his career. Then we have Stay and Kadaya will probably be the starters against Huanfeng and Sword Art. I prefer Huanfeng and Sword Art. They're at minus 225. It does seem like a somewhat big number, but that's not going to scare me. I believe in the Shining. So that's it. I mean, it's a pretty quick video. I don't really have much. Oh, we have the LCK as well. Nong Shim against Homolife. Nong Shim against Homolife. So let's go to the rosters. Nong Shim Red Force. So we have Kana, BDD, Ghost, Effort, and Dread going up against Dudu, Willer, Kara, Samdi, and Vista. That seems like a pretty straightforward matchup. I think Nong Shim at a minus 670 favorites looking pretty good. Then we have Damwon against KT, and you're not going to bet against Damwon, so let's stop pretending. That's all I got for you today. I've got to run to the office, but thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later. Go The Shining, and forget that DRX lost.